Hello the internet and welcome back to my channel. On the bench today we have a PlayStation 4 Fat. This was sent by Tim, one of my viewers and one of my supporters on Patreon. So thank you very much Tim for being there for quite some time. I understand that the owner of this machine, who's not Tim by the way, tried to service the PlayStation and something went wrong during the service, and that's why the PlayStation ended up on my desk today. So today we're gonna open this PlayStation and try and fix what's wrong with it, and I've taken a peek already and I can say just two words: solder glue. I didn't know what it was, I had to Google it. Stay with me because this is gonna be pretty interesting. Enough me talking, let me thank today's sponsor PCBWay. Now let's open up this PlayStation and see what happens. Now first thing first, I have to acknowledge the state of this machine is pretty nice. All the PlayStation 4 I've worked with, they were all full of scratches and, you know, they look like they've been through a war. This is quite nice once it's nice and clean. Obviously it's been open at the back, but the owner of this PlayStation managed to put the screw protections back in place, so everything looks pretty nice. Now let's remove the case, remove the power supply and take a look. As you can see, the PlayStation is pretty clean, the fan is spotless, so clearly it's been serviced. I see this white stuff in here, I don't know what that could be. It might look like thermal paste, but I don't think it's thermal paste. I have a bad feeling about that. Let me remove the power supply. If you've opened the PlayStation before, you know that removing the power supply is a bit tricky, because that's a very short cable carrying the 5 volts to the motherboard. So when you take out the power supply, you need to be careful, because if you rip it out, you're gonna rip something from the motherboard. Oh, which is exactly what happened to the owner of this PlayStation. Now I went to remove the connector, and the connector ripped from the motherboard because it was already ripped from the motherboard. I need to show you a bit closer so you understand what happened. When the owner of this PlayStation removed the power supply, well, they managed to rip the connector, which is kind of common, unfortunately, because again, there's a very short lead in here and it's easy to take out the power supply and rip the connector. What happened next is that, as I understand, the owner didn't know how to solder, didn't have tools, didn't have a soldering iron. So rather than experimenting, buying a soldering iron and experimenting with some solder, they bought what's called solder glue, which I didn't even know it existed. We need to resolder this connector anyway, so let me remove the motherboard and I'll put it under the microscope so you can understand better what I'm talking about. Now, in order to remove the motherboard, I have to remove the Blu Ray cable, and I see a blob of black stuff, which is the same solder glue that the owner used, and I'll show you in a sec. And it's solid, it's not flexible, it's not like silicone. So I don't know how to remove this now. Is it possible? No, the cable is completely stuck. That's gonna be interesting. Okay, thankfully this compound is brittle, so hopefully I just need to poke in it and it will just come off, and hopefully it hasn't melted the cable or caused any further damage. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but this cable is completely stuck, and also the cable on top of the Blu-ray seems completely stuck. There is no movement whatsoever with the connector. I have a bad feeling that this white stuff is like super glue or something like this. I don't understand. You know, I have this is super glue. I have this bad feeling that someone super glued the connector, the cable inside the connector. This is not going anywhere. This is supposed to move, if I remember right. It's not moving. I don't know how, how am I supposed to remove this? Right, let's go under the microscope and see what happens. This is where the 5 volts coming from the power supply joins the motherboard, and as you can see, the connector was ripped and this solder glue was used, and I didn't even know what solder glue was. I had to Google it, and it's a conductive glue, and this is why I'm concerned about the connector, but we'll see that in a second. This is a mixture of super glue and this black compound, which is the actual solder glue. Now, this white stuff, I think these are the, let's call them fumes from the super glue. I've seen that before. So hopefully that is nothing. Obviously, you see something here on these components. But the good news is like the pads seem to be okay, but I won't know until I remove all this stuff and inspect the pads. So this is probably the least of my problems, I'm hoping. Let me show you how the connector looks on the other side. And that's it, you can see the black stuff, which is the solder glue and the super glue itself to keep everything in place. Now, obviously, this is not gonna work. If you're thinking of using solder glue, please don't. I can't think of that thing working. Just get a soldering iron, a scrap board, experiment with it, and yes, that being said, you probably need very small tips for resoldering a connector on a PlayStation 4. But anyways, whatever you have in mind, do not use solder glue. Now, let's have a look at those Blu Ray connectors. I'm quite concerned about that. This is a working connector from another PlayStation I have, and as you can see, if I'm wiggling the cable, it works, the flat cable, and all I need to do is to push this little lever, let's call it that way, and the connector, the cable just comes out totally fine. Let's compare to what I have on the other PlayStation. Now, I don't think it's just me, but I see residues of something here. This looks like, yes, this is definitely residues of super glue. And I'm afraid I see super glue on the flat cable itself. Is this being glued in place? Why on earth would you glue a cable in place? The cable is completely stuck inside the connector, and I don't think... honestly, why? Why gluing it? The only reason I could think of is sometimes those little latches of those flat cables, they get damaged, so the connector tends to come off by itself. But then you can put a little bit of, I don't know, some sort of silicone type of glue that can be easily removed, not something that penetrates inside the connector. I don't think this is recoverable. I think I'll have to desolder the whole thing, scrap this whole thing, replace both connectors, and replace the flat cable. Right, let's ignore the connector on the Blu-ray for a moment and let's focus on the one on the motherboard, because that's the one I'm concerned about to remove the motherboard. As you can see, some solder glue was used here, which is conductive, so that's the last thing that you want to use as a glue, but hopefully that's the only thing that was used. I can see it becomes brittle, so hopefully I can free up this connector here. Bisogna essere degli stronzi. I have no words. I thought this would be like a simple task, just redo a connector, but look at that. This is glue. This is super glue, which has been softened by the isopropyl alcohol. So maybe on the other connector I can do the same. Now, whether this connector, this socket, is still working or not, that's an entirely different story. That's the solder glue. But anyways, I freed up the motherboard. Now we can take it out and take a look at the power connector. And if I make this board working again, well, then I can have a look at the Blu-ray and see what I can do about it. Now, whatever happened to this PlayStation, this, to be honest, looks like factory paste, because I can see the little square. It is in good shape, so this PlayStation probably is low hours. But yeah, it doesn't look like this has been replaced. Maybe this was just dusted with some compressed air, and then when the connector came off, they tried and glue it back without removing the motherboard. I don't know. But anyways, let's see if we can revive this thing first. So let's take a look at the connector under the microscope. Well, the first thing to do here is to clear up the area from this mess. So I'm going to use my engraving pen, probably I'm going to use my Dremel with my hard rubber tip, and probably some of my tweezers and everything. We need to see what happens under this mess, and then we'll think about what to do with the connector. And we are very much in luck. The PCB is absolutely perfect. There is no damage whatsoever. So that is great. Now, I was thinking of try and reuse the existing connector. Let's take a look. Now, we might be a bit less in luck in here. The connector, I think it's usable, because I think with a little bit of scrubbing, I can revive all these contacts and everything, but once again, the connector is drenched in super glue, so I don't think these two parts will ever come apart again. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to drench this connector in isopropyl and leave it there for a little while, and hopefully the super glue will soften up as we saw on the motherboard. Alright, I mean, luck, I managed... No, però non c'ho il microfono. Non ce l'ha capitato una volta averlo fatto senza il microfono. Alright, I mean, luck, I managed to recover the connector. Now let's try and solder it back on the board. The PlayStation 4 controller has a micro USB port, but this can be changed to a USB-C port. I found a little project online where you can have your PCB manufactured and basically upgrade your controller to USB-C, and these can be done through PCBWay, the sponsor of this video. You can find the project directly on PCB Store. All you need to do is just to add it to your cart and purchase it. And just remember that it doesn't come with components, so that's something that you'll have to do by yourself. But PCBWay is not just PCBs, it's also 3D prints. And I found some amazing controller stands available on the internet for free, which you can download, upload on PCBWay.com and have printed and delivered at your place. If you follow my channel, you know I've been using PCBWay for quite some time for all my projects, and I can thoroughly recommend them. The quality is top-notch and the customer service is fantastic. So take a look at PCBWay.com, the link is also down below in the description, and let me thank PCBWay for sponsoring my videos on my channels, because their help makes these videos possible. So thank you very much, PCBWay. Now let's continue with the PS4. Is it gonna work? My concern is that the power connector and the Blu-ray connector and cables are not the only ones having received some attention on this board. But we can only try. I'm giving mains to the power supply in 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, and I believe the power button is the one at the bottom. And we should see the fan spinning. Oh, it's working! It is working! Oh, that is so cool. I saved half of this PlayStation. We have a PlayStation logo on screen. What was that? Well, the Blu-ray is doing things, but obviously it's not connected to the motherboard, so whatever happens, I don't care about the Blu-ray right now, and we should get something and it seems to be working fine. Great. So now that we saved this motherboard, I'm really, really happy. Cannot connect to network. We don't care. Obviously, that is the previous owner stuff. Now it's time to spend a little bit of time on the other connector, the Blu-ray. I'm mostly concerned about the one on the motherboard. So let's take everything out again and see what we can do about it. Well, the situation is not great, I'm afraid. There is glue everywhere, and this is definitely an SMD-only connector. What I mean is, I need to warm up the board to desolder and resolder it, which is definitely something I'd like to avoid. I'm not great at that, and I don't want to damage this board because it works. So I know it's unlikely, but let me try and revive this connector. The one on the Blu-ray is kind of secondary, as I believe I could pair another Blu-ray on this board, but this one I really would like not to have to replace it. So let me see what I can do about it. And no, I don't think this connector is recoverable. It's full of glue on one end, and I think I'm just wasting my time. So reluctantly, I'll have to try and replace it. Now, I do have a donor board. It's the one that I baked in this episode. What I think I'm going to do is to use some low melt solder to remove the connector from the donor board without damaging the connector itself. I don't care about the board, but definitely the connector. And this one on this board, I'll remove it using low melt solder and some heat, but not too much, then I don't care. And then I will try and solder it manually, because I don't think I can solder an SMD plastic connector without damaging it with hot air. Even from the back, the board is gonna warp, I would need to preheat it, and I don't know, this board is working. I think doing manual soldering is the safest way. But who knows, I might be mistaken. Let me get the donor board and see if I can get that connector without damaging it. The PlayStation 4 board is thick and full of ground and power planes, basically large sheets of copper sandwiched together. Soldering or desoldering on such PCBs is not dissimilar to doing so on a heatsink. If the board is cold, you won't be able to get the solder to melt at 230 degrees while the rest of the board is at room temperature. I tried that though. First I tried to apply low melt solder on the connector, but the pins wouldn't take it. So I warmed up the area with hot air and finally I could see the solder flowing. Then I tried and tried with my hotter station from below up to 380 degrees and 200 liters per minute, which is a lot. Most stations can only do 120 liters per minute. Nothing. The solder wouldn't melt and I couldn't read more than 135 degrees on that area. Why didn't you set your hotter station at maximum, I hear you screaming? Well, because it's never the right approach. Take a look at this short where I show the massive mechanical stress a PCB has to withstand when only a spot gets warmed up. So reluctantly I went for plan B, the preheater. My preheater is not large enough to cover the whole PlayStation, but it will do. Thankfully low melt solder exists and I only needed to reach around 160 degrees on the board to remove the connector. I felt more optimistic that I could do the same thing with a working board. I followed the same process. Low melt solder flows okay on the pins when the board is warmed up, and once again the connector comes off at 160 degrees Celsius. The connector is removed and it's undamaged. I cleaned it up and thankfully I spotted a bridge of solder in a hidden spot. Now I can clean the board and proceed with manual desoldering. As Louis Rossmann says, always use the largest tip possible when soldering. But these pins are tiny and my small knife tip is not small enough. So I ended up using this very small tip, which I never use because it's too small. Look at this, it's tiny. But with a little patience, I was able to solder all the pins. The solder flows even under the ground pads and the connector is firmly attached to the PCB. The outcome is excellent and I start feeling optimistic for this board. Alright, I'm pretty happy with the outcome. I feel kind of optimistic because I didn't use stupid temperatures and everything seems to be okay. So first thing first, let's make sure that this board still works and then we'll think of what to do with the Blu-ray player. Yes, amazing, fantastic. So the PlayStation is still working. Now, whether the Blu-ray pathway connector, I think is an IDE connection, on the board is still working after that disaster, there's no way to know. Now, I need to find out how to swap the Blu-ray player with another one. I understand I need to repair it with the PlayStation 4. I'll educate myself, and I'll be back in a moment. And apparently the answer is no, a Blu-ray player cannot be remarried on a PlayStation 4 FAT. And the reason is that with the first revision of the PlayStation 4, basically Sony ran out of space on the motherboard and they moved this little chip here. This is the Renesas chip and I understand it's basically the Blu-ray controller. There wasn't space on the motherboard, so they moved it on this little daughter board. So I believe I have two options here. The first one is to swap this chip between these two boards, and as you can see, it's pretty small. The other one is to swap the plastic connector, and I was going to go with the plastic connector because this board is pretty small. It doesn't have so many ground planes as the main motherboard. Then I realized that there is another plastic connector at the back. Now, I might not be too concerned about this one. Let's call this a donor board, even though I think it comes from a working Blu-ray player, so I wouldn't like to just throw it away. I'm concerned about removing this one without damaging the one at the bottom, which is definitely required for this board to work. But I still think that the plastic connector is the better choice, so let me get the big preheater, which I wasn't thinking of using, but at this point I think I still want to use it, and let me see if I can do a good job with this one before damaging this one. And with the experience gained with the previous connector, swapping these two was much simpler. These electrolytic capacitors on the board concerned me, so I covered them with Kapton tape and aluminium foil. Then the process was more or less the same: apply low melt solder and then remove the connectors on both boards. The good connector is then cleaned. Low melt solder is brittle, so you don't want to leave it on your parts, and attached to the board belonging to our PlayStation 4. The process is the same, though on this occasion I kept bridging pins for whatever reason. And please note the effort to be able to use the microscope at an angle. The pins were covered by the connector itself, so I couldn't really see them from an overhead position. The connector went back nicely as previously. I thoroughly washed it with isopropyl alcohol and dried it with compressed air multiple times to make sure that all the flux was removed. Alright, the PS4 is back in one piece. Is it gonna work? One big variable of all this thing is that I don't know whether the Blu-ray disc was working before it was glued in. So that's gonna be a big question mark, but there's no other way to know than to switch it on. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. Still working. Let's hope that we still have a picture on screen. We do, that's great. Means nothing's horribly wrong with this daughter board. I don't hear the Blu-ray disc trying. I think earlier on when it was disconnected, it was trying something. Maybe that's the standard behavior when it's not connected to something, but let's wait until the main menu. All right, let's try the eject button. Well, it's doing something, it's beeping, and let me try with a game. Now, I think the PlayStation is upside down, so I think the disc has to go this way. And it is loading, which is good. I think, yes, it's working! Amazing! Look at that, it's actually working. This is so cool. This is so cool. If you follow my channel, I'm not too skilled when it comes to those small things, small connections, SMDs, BGAs. So this is great exercise, and I'm really, really happy to see that this is working again. Fantastic! Right, this Blu-ray disc works totally fine. I am really, really happy that this PlayStation is back to life. Now, before reassembling this thing, two things. First thing first, I think I'd like to repaste the APU, because when I reinstalled it last time, I just reused the previous paste just in case I had to open it again. I think it's only fair to just, now everything works, to just properly paste it and then close it. Yep. Alright, so I went to play a game to test that everything worked fine, and it wouldn't work. It would log me out every single time I would start any games I tried on this PlayStation 4. So I had a look online and someone suggested the time, and I forgot that obviously I swapped the battery, so the time and date were reset. They did, they were reset, and I set them back to 2025, but it still wouldn't work. And then I think I found what the problem is. This PlayStation is running a very old firmware, it's 8.03, and that's intentional because you can run some homebrew software on it and that kind of stuff. I don't really know exactly how it works. The latest firmware is 12.5. Now, when you remove the battery, the PlayStation basically has to call home, call Sony, PlayStation Network, to resync whatever, resync the date and probably download some certificates to allow the PlayStation to download and play online. But this PlayStation is running on an old firmware, so the Sony network is preventing me from connecting to it because I'm not running the latest firmware. Now, the owner of this PlayStation would like to avoid installing the latest firmware, and I understand that this was known as the time bomb. Imagine in a few years' time, the PlayStation Network is not available anymore, you replace the battery in your PlayStation 4, and now suddenly you can't play anything, not even physical copy of this. The PlayStation becomes a brick. So I had a look online, and apparently Sony quietly fixed this with firmware 9. So I'm going to upgrade to firmware 9 using a USB stick, because online obviously you can only update to the latest version officially, and hopefully this will restore the physical copy functionality on this PlayStation 4. So let's update to firmware 9 and cross our fingers and see if I can play Drive Club again. And thankfully it now works, so nothing broken, it's just a little quirk with the older firmware, which Sony thankfully managed to quietly fix with version 9. I think this PlayStation is done and dusted, I can close it and it's finished, but before finishing this video, I'd like to take a look at this controller because it doesn't seem to be working. Let's take a look at this controller. It doesn't work with the PlayStation, and if I plug my computer here, my Windows computer, this is supposed to make some light and also being recognized. It's not being recognized, not doing anything. I can see this has been opened before, so I have a bad feeling about that, but let's open it up real quick. Hopefully something simple. Okay, so the power is coming from this end of the shell and through this little cable, flat cable here, into this connector here. Now this flat cable is quite mangled, but if I see that right, that was connected like this. So the contacts were on the left-hand side, but if I see the connector right here, the contacts are on the right-hand side. So I think this flat cable has been mangled while the controller was being worked on, and then it was just plugged the wrong way around. Let me see if I can straighten it up a bit. Now, if you plug this cable the other way around, you're not shorting anything, doing anything. There's just no connectors on the other side. So really, basically, you are disconnecting the USB socket from the rest of the controller. Yes, it's working. Look at that. Is it being recognized? It's being recognized by Windows. Perfect. I'm not sure how much you can see. It's a bit overexposed. That's it. That's a little better. And yes, I can see there is a controller being recognized. Let me run the test software. We make sure that everything works before I close it up. Now, it's difficult to test this controller when it's open because the shell at the back is supposed to push on the PCB. And I think the PCB is supposed to have a screw, which might be missing here. But I can see like buttons are mostly working, maybe. Maybe not. I got something which is not working. Like these are the main buttons and only this one is working. This kind of works, but it doesn't. But I have a feeling it's just the PCB not making enough pressure on the little contacts that are inside. The joysticks are working. Right, maybe you just want to quickly open it up and check that little contact inside, give it a clean. And I'm sure there's a screw somewhere that keeps the PCB in place, at least roughly in place. Do I remember right, or there was supposed to be a screw in here, but it doesn't seem to be there. And yes, there was definitely a screw in here, which unfortunately I haven't got. So I don't know exactly what to do. I'm not prepared to cannibalize one of my controllers for this. So I don't know. But yes, obviously the problem here, it can be the connection between this plastic thing, which looks like a bit dirty, and the pads here on the PCB itself. And we learned on a previous video that obviously we need the controller fully closed because the back shell is gonna apply the enough pressure on the PCB for that contact to happen. But right now, let's give a clean to these contacts and hopefully that's all it needs. Okay, so the buttons are now working. What is not working is L2. It's only working partially, and we've seen in the previous PlayStation 4 video that these triggers can be easily damaged by use. But yeah, everything else seems to be working, so that's good news. But yeah, this one doesn't seem to be working great, and it doesn't seem to be a contact issue because I'm pressing on the PCB right now. So maybe we can take a quick look. I'm not sure how much this can be seen on camera. The pad is not split. It's definitely been used a lot, but it's not split as the other one. So this should be working. Let's remove it and clean the underneath. And if I'm looking at this controller, I think the pads are brand new, because I think this one was installed the other way around, unless I'm mistaken. And I think this film here is labeled 1G, if I'm seeing that right. Maybe it's the other way around, I'm not sure. But it doesn't feel like the original Sony. There's a scratch in here. I'm not sure how much you can be seen from the camera. But most importantly, yeah, these don't look like original pads. All right, I wasn't expecting that. I reset the controller and now the button is going up to 1. It was a bit suspicious that it was going down up to 0.5, 0.6 every single time. And now it's going up to 1. What about the other one? It's working as well. That's weird. I didn't know that resetting a controller could actually fix anything. I was wondering why there is a reset button on the controller itself. Yep, everything is working, and this is working as well with the reset. Did you know that you could fix the controller with the reset? I had no idea, but this is working totally fine. There's only one screw missing, and what I'm gonna do, because all the screws should be all the same on this controller, I'm gonna return this controller with the screw missing at on the outside. So hopefully the owner has a screw somewhere, hopefully they have it, and they can replace it, or maybe they can order one online, or a set of screws, I don't know. Maybe they have a broken controller. Unfortunately, I haven't got a spare myself, so that's the best I can do. I'd rather have a missing screw on the external shell than a missing screw on the internal one, so nobody has to go back inside. Yeah, the controller is working perfectly fine, so I guess this is the end of the repair for this machine. Let's play something. Right, okay, that race didn't go very well, but hey, I'm not really a gamer. I only play racing games whenever I have a minute, but yeah, my PlayStation, it's been collecting dust for quite some time. But anyways, this is working totally fine, and we've also managed to save and rescue the controller. Really, really happy. I was totally not expecting this kind of damage. It's been great fun, because I thought it was just the power connector, but it turned out to be those tiny little Blu Ray connectors as well, and it was good practice for me if one day I have to do something similar. As I said at the beginning, if you need to do any soldering, don't use solder glue, please. And please don't put super glue in connectors. Why on earth? But anyways, we saved it. Happy days. We have a happy, very happy PlayStation 4, from what I can see here, with pretty low hours, again, judging from the thermal paste on the APU itself. This PlayStation is going back to its owner very soon. Thank you, team, for sending it to me, and thank you to all my patrons, by the way. Thank you for being here, some of them for quite some time, so thank you very much. If you enjoyed this video, as usual, I'd appreciate a thumb up down below, and also consider subscribing to this channel and my second channel if you like this kind of things. As I said, don't forget I'm on Patreon and on Facebook, and the links are also down below in the description. If you don't want to support me on Patreon, which is very much understandable, well, maybe you can buy me a coffee, and the link is also down below in the description. If you don't want to buy me a coffee, which is also very much understandable, well, thank you for your time, and most importantly, I hope you enjoyed the video. Well, that's it for today. Wish you a great day, and hope to see you soon here on my channels for my next videos. Thank you very much, and goodbye. Bye-bye.